All right, how you doing, guys? This is Frisbee Sports. So, college football season's over. Clemson beat Alabama. We know how this year went. So, what I'm going to be talking about here is the future of the college football playoffs. What I would change, what I would make different, and stuff like that. So, in the history of the college football playoff, we started this new system with 4 teams in 2014. That was the year when we won the national championship, being Ohio State. Um, in that playoff, it was Florida State, Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon. And obviously, it came down to Ohio State, Oregon, and we won. Now, ever since the start of the playoffs, there's been teams left out who many think deserve to be in, without a doubt. So, what can we change to make better? Oh, and by the way, I fixed the chair that I broke. So, okay, anyway. So, back to this. And every year I'm looking at right now the history of the playoffs since we started off with this new system. Every single year there's been a team or a couple teams that always look like they deserve to be in and they end up getting left out. This year, obviously, that was Georgia and Ohio State. Being the fact that Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Notre Dame got in this year. So, what can we do to change this? Well, obviously, the common thing that's been thrown around would be making an 8-team playoff, which, in my opinion, would be the right thing to do. And that's not new, that's been thrown out there for a while. And I can break this down and say this team would face this team and give this team an opportunity against this team. But here's the thing. The idea is not to give these lower teams who just happen to have a decent year and sneak into the 8th seed or the 8th spot, get in the playoffs. What the idea of changing it to an 8-team playoff would be would to limit the chances of the 2 teams who are in every single year in the national championship game, being Clemson and Alabama. We've seen in the history of the playoffs, the most common matchup in the playoffs is Clemson and Alabama. So what's the right way to do this? Number one, if you want to change this, if you're agreeing with this, what I would do is the thing that's been thrown around a lot. You have the 5 conference championships, the winners of their conference, being the Pac-12, which I know, well, we'll get to that later. So the Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, ACC. So about the Pac-12, now obviously Washington won the Pac-12, faced Ohio State. We've seen how that went. So why would you want to have a lower team like the Pac-12 get in? That's the idea of winning your conference, okay? If you're going to be, and this is why teams like Notre Dame should join a conference, a major conference. In order to get into this new playoff system, you would have to obviously win your conference, being a major conference, and then you'd get in. And here's why I would make this so that the Pac-12 does get in. Now, obviously, being the fact that there's 8 spots, you got to figure out matchups and such. So here's how I looked at it. If you have the 5 conference champions to those conferences get in the playoffs, and then you had 3 teams outside of those conference championships, the teams like, the Ohio State when they got in, or when we got in, the year when we faced Clemson, didn't win a national championship or a conference championship, and Penn State did when we got in ahead of them. And then obviously the Penn State, the Penn State argument, and, the Georgia and whoever else. And I'm not saying Penn State because they would be in every year. They obviously wouldn't, because you've seen a decline in that. But I'm talking specifically the year that they should have got in. Under this system, that would have allowed Penn State to get in and one of the top 4 seeds, and Ohio State could get one of those bottom 3 spots, being the fact that it would be 8 teams. So what would I do to make this seem fair? I'd have the top 4 seeds playing at home first round. So it would be like, I don't know, maybe you could just say Alabama versus UCF at Alabama. Notre Dame versus Ohio State at Ohio State, or at Notre Dame. And these matchups of these top tier programs playing either at home or away or whatever, that would create excitement. That would be, can you imagine watching an Ohio State play Alabama at the Shoe or at Alabama? Just, it's amazing when you break this down and just think about the possibilities of what this could be, more than just, okay, playoff team or a playoff game, and then you get into the championship. In the history of the playoffs, a lot of these matchups, or a lot of these first round matchups, a lot of them are pretty good-sized blowouts. Other than the Georgia versus Oklahoma overtime game last year, and maybe a couple of these closer matchups, a lot of them are won by about 2 scores or 2 to 3 scores. So how can you make this better? I think if you keep this 4-team system, you're going to run into the same problem every year, being the fact that it'll be the same teams every single year. So if you implement an 8-team playoff system, that would lower that chance of getting those same teams, and it would give these lower tier teams, not lower tier programs, but teams that maybe had 1 loss, 2 loss, but they're hot, they show they can win. Teams like Georgia, who went head to head with Alabama and just came up short. Those teams would find a spot in the lower, the bottom of the 8. So, and that's nothing. With the 5 conferences getting in, here's how I would do this. If I'm the committee, I'm saying, okay, 5 conference champions gets in. From those 5 conference champions, you kind of do how the playoff selection is now, okay? But specifically for 5 spots, or for the 4 spots, you choose which 4 conference champions are better than the last one. So you 4 out of 5, and then 1 drops to 5. So if that makes sense. So I'm saying if you did, like, say this year, you'd have Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and then Washington would be 5, if that's correct. And then you would have the Notre Dames, the Georgia, and then, whoever else was sitting there that they would decide. So to break that down, that's how I do it. Number 1, if you're a conference champion in those Power 5 conferences, you get in. And then the committee breaks down on which the top 4 conferences are, and then the 5th best conference has to play away in the first round. And then you would decide, after they decide that, you would decide, the bottom 2 teams that would be left. So, or 3 teams that would be left, rather. So anyway, so here's something that I haven't heard that I would think would be something that they should consider. If I'm the committee, when it's all said and done after the season's over, the number 1 argument that you're hearing every single year is schedule. Well, Alabama didn't play nobody. Oklahoma didn't play nobody. Clemson didn't play nobody. Whatever. Here's how you fix that. Now, how exactly they would go ahead and do that, I really don't know how they could break it down. But here's what I would propose. At the end of the year, when the champion is decided, I would have where either the top 25 teams or top 10 teams or top 15 rankings wise, the committee would force those programs to face somebody else in that top 15, rankings that they have. For example, when Ohio State played Oklahoma, that was one of their key victories to get in, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, so here's how I would do this. I would force teams like Alabama. Well, number one, what I would do is the team that wins the championship should have to face the second toughest team at least once in the regular season. So maybe you could do an Alabama versus Clemson in the regular season. That way, if Alabama wins and Clemson would then have, 1 to 2 losses, it just make everything easier based on who is a stronger team and who has a better argument to get in the playoffs. Now, obviously, you got to win your conference championship and such. But anyway, so with this layout, it would force teams like Notre Dame to have to join a conference to kind of earn their way in a lot easier. Because the punishment of not winning the conference championship would be you would have to play on the road first round. Okay. Now, you could throw out one regular season game, do whatever you want. But here's the thing. So, what I would do, this is how this would work. An 8-team playoff. One would play 8 at 1. 2 would play 7 at 2, and so forth. And then, after you would get that, there would be no argument on who should be in the top 4. And then, just like the system now, you would play that game. 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3. Then you would get to the national championship. Now, you can't tell me that the odds would be the same of like an Alabama playing Clemson again. Okay. And who knows? I mean, if they are the 2 best teams, then they will play. But the idea is not that the 4-team system is the best. It's obviously, people said it was better than the last system, and people will say this will be better than this system. But it's about what works best, and in my opinion, it would leave. Now, I've heard this argument. I've heard the argument of, well, if you make it an 8-team playoff, then 9, 10, and so forth, they're going to be arguing about their spot. All right, listen, let me break this down for you, okay? If you're the 9th best team in the country or the 10th best team in the country, and you think you belong in the playoffs to play against a team like Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Georgia, Ohio State, name somebody, you don't. I'm sorry, don't mean to hurt your feelings, but you don't belong in the playoff, okay? It's not hard. That's why this system works the best, okay? It's not hard. I'm tired of these. It's such an idiotic thing to say when you say that, well, if you're just going to keep extending it, that Team X is going to be upset because they're not in the playoff. If you obviously you want to get in the playoff. Every team wants to get in the playoff. It's not hard. Every team wants to get in the playoff. It's really not hard. This is why this system would take out the less arguments. Every single year, you're talking about 1 team, 2 teams, saying they have a case to be in the playoff. And sometimes, yes, they get it wrong a lot. Now, obviously, Alabama gets in every year. Clemson has been in Not every year. They weren't in the first year, were they? No, they weren't. Anyway, my point is this system would work the best. If you're arguing to keep 4 teams, then you're simply a supporter or a fan of one of those top 2 teams. And I'm sorry, but it's just not working anymore. It's not good for college football to have the same team winning every year. It's that simple. Look at the Super Bowl. Super Bowl's this week. How many of you, and I don't know how many of you watching this know me personally or not, but I couldn't care less about the Rams or certainly not the Patriots. I don't care. It's the same thing with the college football playoffs. You have to have some kind of system where it makes it fair for other teams to get in. Now, you can point to the NFL playoffs and say, well, look, the Patriots are in every year. I got it. But look, they're not playing the same team against them every single year. If Alabama makes the championship every year, then they deserve to be in. It's that simple. It's not hard at all. Now, I know I'm getting a little Alex Jones upset here, but I'm just saying, and if you don't know who Alex Jones is, he does rants, whatever. I'm just saying the system right now is flawed. It's extremely flawed, and it needs to be changed. And it's probably not going to get changed for a while because they don't want change. They want the same teams in every year. Shannon Sharp says it all the time. It's the Alabama Invitational, and that's facts. It's ridiculous. And there's not much to be said on this more. But I'm saying if you really want to keep the 4 teams and you're so for this that you won't change for anything, here's what you do. Just like I said with the strength of schedule argument. Now, we have an easy schedule this year, okay? And I do think there might be one trap game like there is every year on our schedule, Ohio State. But at the end of the year, to limit the argument, if you don't want 8 teams, if you're the committee and you want to put that on the back burner, make these top teams, the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Ohio State, the Oklahoma, the Georgias, name somebody, Notre Dame, I don't care. Make them play somebody who is a top-tier caliber, like when Notre Dame played Michigan this year. Now, obviously, Notre Dame won that game, but people still loved Michigan. Now, obviously, Michigan got beat by Ohio State. Now, if Michigan had an easy schedule and Michigan didn't play a Notre Dame or Ohio State or whatever, and they steamrolled all their opponents, and they got to the Ohio State game, and they had 1 loss, there would be people arguing they beat Notre Dame. Who did Ohio State beat? This is what I'm saying. This is why there needs to be a system where the top of the top plays somebody who can, go head-to-head with that. It's just frustrating because every year after year after year, I sit back on that Selection Sunday and watch Alabama and watch Clemson and watch some team. I get it. I'm not saying this from a Buckeye perspective either. And I know this is a longer video I'm looking at now. It's about to be 20 minutes long. But it needs to be said. The system is flawed, okay? And I know it creates excitement. Half of the reason why they haven't changed it's because ratings. They want people to guess, well, my team's going to be in. Well, guess what? Your team's not going to be in. It's because I don't know. I'm just sick of it every single year. Getting your hopes up at the before the season starts, going to the spring game, watching, somebody throw and dominate and whatever. Oh, we're getting it this year. Well, guess what? You're going to get screwed over like everybody else does because they know who they want in. It's all about rating. It's all about The system needs to be changed. It's that simple. I'm getting sick and tired of this every single year. I don't even know what else to say. And it's not like this is going to change, because they're not going to change. They never do. They're not. When you have conferences every single year who deserve to be respected and they're left out, and I'm not talking about the Pac 12 because y'all suck. I'm sorry if you're a Washington fan. I don't know. Anyway, I'm done. I'm tired of ranting. This is my longest video I've ever made. But you know what? These things needed to be said. And I don't care. Make fun of me because I'm yelling at the camera, talking to nobody. I don't care. Okay, I'm sick and tired of this every single year. And here's another thing. Before I end this video, we made the Rose Bowl. This is our Ohio State Rose Bowl shirt. Just got it yesterday. The Rose Bowl was the main bowl game. Why is the Rose Bowl not one of the playoff games every year? That's another thing that makes me hate college football. I mean, I love college football. I probably watch it more than the NFL sometimes. But you know what? At least the NFL sometimes is fair. Yes, I know the Patriots are in every freaking year. I got it. But something's got to change. It can't stay this way any longer. I'm done ranting. Like, comment, subscribe. Comment. Tell me what you think if you agree. So, all right. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.